I no longer need this row column, so that is just x playing now. What if I wanted to alternate back and forth between the two? What I need to do is I need some way of keeping track of whose turn it is. So I'm actually going to create some more variables to keep track of that. So I'm going to create an int turn. So I'm going to have I think I want to have a 0 for x's turn and 1 for o's turn. But rather than having 0 and 1, let me create some constants for that as well. So x turn is going to be 0. O turn is going to be 1. Keep in mind that the board uses move, turn uses turn, so because otherwise you're going to get those two messed up. So turn is going to be x turn to begin with. I have to define the constants before I use them, so make sure that turn is after you define x turn. All right, so if turn is x turn, then the spot I want to play at better be an x move. Otherwise, then it better be O's turn. All right, so then O moves there. I'm going to make turn the other person's turn if they play. So turn is now O's turn, turn, not move, and then turn is going to be X's turn. Notice that I used an else statement here, because if I had an if statement here and an if statement here, what would happen is it would be X's turn, he'd set it to O's turn, and then O would immediately play. We don't want that. All right, A1, A2, A3, A3, 4, oops, A3, there we go. Now, there is a slight problem right now. Let's say that I play A3 again. Oh, O just played right over the top of X. That seems kind of cheaty. So let's make sure that that spot is a blank before you're allowed to play. So if row column is a blank, then you're allowed to do this stuff here. So only inside of here are you allowed to do that. And if not, let's actually make them play again. So let's give them a warning, hey, so piece there. There is a piece there. A1, A1, there's a piece there. B1? Okay, that's looking good. All right, what about winning and losing? So it's while true, while fun, through one game, it would be nice if they actually checked to see who won the game. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a method that goes through and checks for a win. So let me create that down here. You can actually create methods wherever you like within the class. So this terminates my class. This is all my print board method. I could create another method here before it or another method here after it. It turns out it doesn't matter where you create the methods as long as they're within your class. And you can't put methods inside of methods. So I have to do before or after this guy. So let's just create it down here afterwards. Now check win is actually going to return whether somebody won or not. So it's not going to be void. It's going to be a Boolean that I'm going to return, true or false. So you say what kind of thing you're returning. So my plan is I'm going to go through and check all the way across the top row. And if X wins, I'm going to return true. And then I'm going to check the next row, and then the next row, and then each of the 3 columns, and then the 2 diagonals. And if I get through all of those and I haven't won yet, I'm going to return false. Now you have to make sure that by the time you reach the end of this method, it returns a Boolean. By saying Boolean here, I'm guaranteeing that I'm going to return either true or false. If you are having trouble where it says that it might not return true or false, it's probably because there's some set of if statements that it's possible it might not return true or false. So let me start with the first one. So if board 0, 0 is X move, and board 0, 1 is X move, and board 0, 2 is X move. Then I'm going to return true. So that's one possible winning combination, that X does those things. So let's try that real quick. Let's see, that looks like that is across the top. A1, B1, A2, B2. Oh, you know what? I never call this method. It will be more useful if I actually use it. So what I'm going to do here is instead of while true, I'm going to say while check win is false. I'm going to just keep doing this. So once it becomes true, I should end this loop. And actually, out here, when I am done, now I'm just going to say if check win is true, I'm going to say X wins. A1, B1, A2, B2, A3, X wins, and we terminate the program. All right, now I don't really want to make this all over again. I'm already going to have to do 8 checks in here in order to make sure that I see if X wins. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pass in which player this is and then use the same method for both. This is going to be exactly the same pattern for O winning. The only difference is that this thing here is going to be changed to be O move. So rather than creating 2 separate methods where it's the same pattern with one thing changed, I'm going to pass in the thing that changes and use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in which player I'm talking about here. This is called a parameter. You say what kind of thing it is and then give the variable a name. And then down here what I'm going to say is change that to player. All right, so check win player. If 0, 0 is that player, if 0, 1 is that player, if 0, 2 is that player. So now I can pass in the parentheses of check win, whether it's X that I want to check for or whether it's O I want to check for. So up here, when I check for wins, I'm going to say, well, X move is false. And now I can check for O by saying, using the same method and just passing in whether O move is false. And then down here I say, if X won, then X wins. Otherwise, if O won, I'm going to say something here. So that only checks for the top row. Let me give you another example. So let's say if board, let's do a diagonal. So if 0, 0 is the player, and board 1, 1 is the player, and board 2, 2 is the player. Return true. So that's going to be here, here, here. I'll leave it up to you to finish the remaining 6 possibilities. Make sure you have all 3 rows, 3 columns, and 2 diagonals. But that's going to take care of continuing to play until somebody wins. Now there's another problem here where I'm going to have to check for ties. The basic way you check for ties is you're going to go through every single square in your grid and see if any of them are blanks. If any one of them is a blank, it is not a tie. If none of them are blanks, it is a tie. So I'm going to create a method for this one as well. And the idea behind this is, so I'm going to place this down here after check win. It's also going to return a Boolean. I suppose you could also call this check board is full, because that's really what I'm checking. It's possible that somebody won on the very last move, and it would also consider that a tie. So watch the order you do things in. Always check for wins first and then check for ties. So I could do something here where I check through every row and column, check board, and board 0. If that spot is a blank, then it's not a tie. If we get all the way down here and we haven't returned false yet, well, by golly, the board is full. Okay, that's most of what we need. The only thing is that outside of here, once we have a win or a tie, we need to ask them if they play again. That means that all of this stuff here needs to be in another while loop. Maybe we have a Boolean out here, which is still playing, while still playing. To be consistent, let me do that. Still playing is true, do all of this. So if somebody is 1, you're going to ask them if they want to play again. If they say no, set still playing to a false, that's going to terminate all of this. If they do want to play again, you're also going to need to reset the board. That means you're going to have to go through the entire board and set them all back to blanks. And maybe you want to reset X's turn as well. All right, that should get you started on tic-tac-toe.